This is homework problem 8-122 from lesson H8-7 on polynomial division. It states, without actually multiplying, decide which of the following polynomials could be the product of x minus 2 times the quantity of x plus 3 times the quantity of x minus 5. Justify your choice. All right, so as I'm looking at this here, some things that we have to kind of pay attention to, and I'm going to just rewrite a little bit of this down here. I have x minus 2 times an x plus 3 times an x minus 5. So if you're unsure about this, what you need to think about is this. Like if we were to take, these, I know it says don't multiply them out, but if I'm going to explain it, I'm going to explain it by multiplying a little bit of it out. Right? If we multiply two binomials together, right, this first set we have x squared, plus an x minus 6, right? We'd still be multiplying that times the quantity of x minus 5 if we were multiplying the whole thing together. But I want you to think about here, when I multiplied this x times this x, it gave me this x squared, right? And then in that next step here, we'd be multiplying this x squared times our x, and that would be giving us our greatest term. We know that that would end up being an x to the third power, right? Now, as we look up here, which of those choices, A, B, C, and D, have just an x to the third, right? That would be choice A and choice C. We don't know where this 2 is coming from in B and D, so we can go ahead and process of elimination, eliminate those two there. Okay, now, along similar lines, okay, when we think about the last term that we end up with in our polynomials, like if I was to multiply the x minus 2 and the x plus 3 here, right? If I think about this term and this term, that's where my negative 6 comes from, right? So negative 2 times 3 gives me negative 6. That's where that comes from. And then we would have to multiply, through when we were multiplying the trinomial times the binomial, we'd have a negative 6 and a negative 5 being multiplied at some point. And that's going to give us our constant term at the end, which we know when we multiply negative 6 and negative 5, we're going to end up with a plus 30, right? So who cares what's happening right now in the middle? We can go ahead and check to see which of our expressions up here has an x to the third in the front and a plus 30 in the back. And obviously that is going to be letter C. So the main thing to take away from this problem here is when you're multiplying out, binomials and things here, that last term is always going to be the product of the last part of each factor. And the first term is always going to be the product of the first parts. Now we know we end up with multiple things in between, right? In this case, there's like a negative 4x and a minus 11x there. I'm not concerned about that at the moment. I'm just trying to be able to come up with an answer quickly here. So first term comes from the product of the first terms. And then even more importantly here, for what we'll be getting into, the last term comes from the product of the last terms in each of the binomials there. Okay, so how's this going to help us? Well, let's look now at 8-123. It says, which of the following binomials could be a factor of x to the third minus 9x squared plus 19x plus 5? Explain your reasoning. Okay, so if we were trying to figure out here, like we were multiplying, right, three binomials together, and we were trying to end up with this x to the third minus 9x squared plus 19x and then plus 5, we know that they're each going to have an x in the front. So each of these terms does have an x in the front there, so we can't really eliminate anything there. However, our number that we have in the very back here, this positive 5, we know has to be the product of these three numbers. Therefore, we are going to have only factors of 5 in these empty spaces here, right? From when we're multiplying our binomials. So if you think about your factors of 5, we could have a negative 1, we could have a positive 1, we could have a negative 5 and a positive 5 there that we were multiplying, right? So if you think about where those are coming from, that means we could only have an x minus 1, an x plus 1, an x minus 5, and an x plus 5 as possible factors. So when we look up here, right, 3 is, I'm sorry, let's start over on the left with A, right? Negative 2 is not a factor of positive 5, so we're going to have to eliminate that one. Okay, B, we had x minus 5, and we had that one listed down here. So that means that this possibly could be a factor. On C, 3 is not a factor of 5. That's not going to work for us. And for D, 2 is not a factor of 5, so that's not going to work for us. So our final answer there would have to be B. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, make sure that you are contacting me and I will help you out. All right, this is problems 8-122 and 123 from the H8-7 homework.